Hello and welcome to the Naked Gaming Podcast with me, Chris Barrow.
And me, Georgia Mills.
Hooray, brand new podcast time, very exciting. I think we need to explain who we are firstly. The idea behind this podcast is we're going to look at gaming news, review new game releases and stuff like that. And I think it's fair to say that we're gaming enthusiasts.
Nerds, you mean?
You mean, yeah, I do mean nerds. I absolutely mean nerds. Thank you for clarifying that. Shall I tell you my gaming history first? Because I actually wrote this down and I was kind of shocked at how many consoles I've gone through.
Should I have prepared more? I haven't written down everything I've ever played.
No, neither have I, which is good because there's some embarrassing ones in here, including My Horse and Me 2, which is a game that will never be mentioned again, ever on this podcast. But I started off with, so I did the Game Boy thing, and then Sega Mega Drives, you know, that sort of thing, N64, PS2, Xbox 360, and then recently I bought myself an Xbox One, so I kind of turned into like an Xbox kind of person in recent times. What about you, Georgia?
So I think the first game I ever remember playing was Donkey Kong.
Yes.
It was at a friend's house, and I used to love visiting this friend. And I wouldn't speak to the friend; I would just play, jumping from barrel to barrel.
Wow. Just total silence.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I don't speak to them anymore.
Wow.
They got rid of the console. No, I've got a PlayStation 4,
Yeah.
and I've had a PlayStation 2 and a PlayStation 1. So I think I've been a sort of pretty steady on the PlayStations, and also I've sort of just got into Steam. But I have a Mac, so it's not super good at the games. They're usually breaking. But,
yes.
Yeah, I love it online where you're just doing it, trying to shoot everything, and your computer goes black, and then your character dies.
It's like real life
And also-
game over.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the casual phone gaming, you know, on the train, commuting, that kind of thing.
What's your train gaming like? Because I've recently started doing, like Borderlands. They do like Telltale games, you know, the story ones where you like Walking Dead and stuff. You click the buttons. That's like ideal for the train for me because you don't really have to think. You just do a bit of swiping.
I actually like the thinky ones.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I get really addicted to the dumb ones like Candy Crush and spend absolute hours on them, but then I feel sick with myself afterwards because they're so dumb.
I'm dirty.
Yeah, but I love those kind of room escape type things, like I think that's called Room, and the Forever Lost series where you have to, I don't know, you find a key, you find the door, what's the code, that kind of stuff. I love them, they're great.
Well, there we go. You're going to escape this podcast by the end, I'm sure. And what are you playing recently? Because I've got this new Xbox One, and I've got a PS4 as well, actually. So I've been trying to catch up because it took me a while to get hold of them. But right now, I'm absolutely loving God of War, like the most recent God of War, which is just brilliant. It's like all single shot, amazingly kind of filmic in a way for a game. And I've been obsessed with that recently, so that's kind of my new thing. But that's PS4. I can't really find anything on Xbox One that I really need to buy at the moment, so it's kind of just sitting there. I don't know. What about you?
Can I make a recommendation?
Yeah, please do.
The updated Worms Armageddon from the Xbox store. It's very, very good.
I'm writing it down now. Worms Armageddon, Relive Childhood. There we are.
Exactly.
It's on the list. What about you?
So the game I've absolutely loved recently has been the new Resident Evil game, Resident Evil Biohazard, I think it is.
Is it 7? It's 7, isn't it?
Number 7, yeah. And I'm an absolute coward, and this game is terrifying. And I've played it through once myself, and it forced my housemates to play it through as well, so I can watch them be terrified.
Wow.
And it's so good and so scary. I even played it with my dog in the room, and my dog got scared.
Wow.
That's how scary it is.
That's incredible.
The plan this week, we're going to look at how game cycles actually work. Red Dead Redemption has been out for a while, and there were comments about some of the team working 100-hour weeks just before the release. And now the multiplayer has been launched. So what is a game cycle? How does it work? And what happened to these poor people?
I know, exactly. Great question.
And we're going to go old school with a retro revival. And this is where we look at games that have been re-released to tap into our nostalgia hunger. And we're going to start with Spyro Reignited.
Oh, it's so good. I love Spyro. The best. Zombies as well is our special feature this week. I think we're both fans of zombies. Would you say so?
Oh, who isn't a fan of a nice zombie?
Brains for dinner. But what is the exact fascination of zombies? We will find out later on.
And we'll want to hear from you. We're thinking of doing a feature called Gaming Heaven or Gaming Hell.
Yeah.
So send us your favourite and your least favourite games. And if you'd like to get in touch, you can email us on our brand new email address. It's gaming@nakedscientist.com.
Whoop whoop, new email. So exciting. Let's start by looking at the news, and it can't have escaped you that Red Dead Redemption 2 has been released on PS4 and Xbox One. And if you haven't experienced it yet, well, it's a Western action-adventure game. It's the follow-up to the hugely popular Red Dead Revolver and Red Dead Redemption 1.
Listen to me. We don't want to kill any of you. But trust me, we will. Wake them up a little! This whole thing is pretty much done. We're more ghosts than people. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a robbery.
Sons of Dutch. Makes us brothers. Sometimes, brothers make mistakes.
You'll never change. I know that.
Developed by Rockstar, it was the best-selling game of 2018. And just before it came out, one of the co-founders, Dan Houser, said his senior writing team spent the last 3 weeks of the release cycle working 100-hour weeks. Well, I've been catching up with Isaac Papismardo. He's the art director and a developer with the Far Cry series from Ubisoft. It's one of the most popular series of first-person shooter games of all time. And I started by asking him how long it takes to get a game from initial concept to release.
Hi. So it really varies from project to project. We at Ubisoft, it's not about really the timing and how long it takes us, but the quality that we put out. We're really lucky at Ubisoft to have the support of different development studios. So really, it's about getting that quality product out there, and we're not so stressed about how long it takes.
And what are some of the challenges of the process?
So for me specifically as art director at Ubisoft, what's most challenging for me is really coming up with a vision that will surprise players. I would really want to give something to the players that they haven't seen before. So for example, on Far Cry New Dawn, bringing Far Cry to the post-apocalyptic setting, we really wanted to avoid all the cliche environments that people are used to, whether from movies or books or from their favorite video games. We wanted to avoid the dark and gloomy atmospheres. We really wanted to mix it up a bit. And for me, that was super important, is how do we surprise our players and give them something refreshing to play.
And with a game like Far Cry, once you've made one game, do subsequent games take less time to make from start to finish?
Yeah, it really varies from game to game. But on Far Cry New Dawn, we chose to stay in Hope County to continue that story of the post-collapse. Although 17 years later did go by, we really wanted to completely transform Hope County. We really wanted it to feel different, but at the same time familiar to those people coming back from Far Cry 5. And at the same time, we also have what we call expeditions, where we transport our players to different locations across America, whether it's Louisiana, whether it's the West Coast, or Arizona in the deserts. So that's something that we're really excited about, is really giving the players different areas to explore and always be surprised with what he's going to see.
They said it was supposed to be the end of everything. But for us, it was just the beginning. Surviving? Nah. We were better than that. This new world had a lot to give, and we took it all. That's how we came out on top. That's how we got here. That's how we found you.
What are the last few months before the actual release date like? I imagine they're quite stressful.
For me, that's the most exciting part of the production. It's where all the magic happens and where we get to polish and we really get to, put that final touch on all the creative decisions that we took. And as art director, especially on the art side, that time of production is really to polish and really to craft the precise experience that we want to give to our players.
How do you relax during that time?
For me, the most relaxing thing is actually to play the build, to play the game. Seeing how the world has evolved is the best thing that could ever happen to me. So really, when I play the game, when I explore the world and seeing all the hard work of the team that's finally coming into the build and looking amazing, that really for me is kind of like a de-stressor, and it kind of makes me happy with exactly what we achieved.
And in a development cycle, is a game ever finished, or does that support have to carry on afterwards, downloadable content, for example, which is huge nowadays?
Nothing's ever finished. Artists are perfectionists, and I'm sure you've heard that cliche before, but we're really happy with Far Cry New Dawn and the state that it's in, and I'm super excited for players to finally get their hands on it.
Thanks to Isaac Papismado from the Far Cry team, giving us an insight into how big AAA releases make their way to our consoles and computers. Well, now let's look at the mobile side of gaming. Nowadays, of course, it's a huge business. And how different a process is it when it comes to releasing games on the small screen? Well, I spoke to Barry Mead, who's the commercial director of Fireproof Games. They developed the Room series of games, and if you haven't played them before, well, you should. You basically swipe and tap your screen to solve the puzzles, and their latest release is The Room Old Sins. Well, I asked Barry how an idea for a game like The Room goes from first inception to the finished product.
Well, The Room, the game would have developed over the time we were developing it, if you know what I mean. We would have started with a much simpler idea. And so in the case of The Room, we started with the idea of trying to recreate on an iPad screen what it feels like to play or to manipulate Chinese puzzle boxes. Are you aware of what they are?
Absolutely, I've seen them, yeah.
So they're basically like if you imagine a jewellery box, but instead of just having a lock and a key, you have maybe 10, 50 or 100 different manipulations you have to do to open the box. It's just a puzzle, effectively. And we thought the touchscreen was very tactile, so we wanted to make a very tactile game, which was something we thought was being overlooked about the touchscreen. So we basically decided we wanted to make a game that was very sympathetic to how people use their phones, which is through the touchscreen.
I suppose that was cutting edge when The Room 1 was first released, was that there weren't so many games like that available on the market. I mean, nowadays there are, but you were kind of one of the first in my experience.
Yeah, I think we were one of the first to take the touchscreen as a sort of central component of the game and take that very seriously. I mean, I wouldn't say that we were the first to make a good touchscreen game, far from it. It was just something that we thought was missing, really. Most video games on mobile at the time were either sort of carryover Facebook free-to-play games, which are just about clicking things, or they were really bad ports from PlayStation or PC, where you had terrible control systems, just trying to be shoehorned into mobile games, which we thought was kind of crazy. So we wanted to, if we were making a PS4 game, we would try and make sure that game sang on the PS4, and we wanted to take the same approach to mobile, where we wanted to make something that was by, about and for mobile devices, but yet wasn't a free-to-play, highly monetized game like most mobile games were at the time.
It's a brilliant initial concept, but I'm interested to know how that then goes on to develop, because I guess when you first started, you didn't know how long that was going to take from start to finish at all.
No, I mean, well, we did in one way and didn't in another. No, we didn't know. No, because we didn't actually know what the game was we were making. We just wanted to try to recreate that feeling. And so we started off with a very simple box and a very simple shapes, and just sort of kept adding different ideas to it. So those boxes became more and more complicated, I guess you'd say. And then the actual game, The Room, which if you play it is quite a creepy sort of atmospheric game, all of that was made up as we went along. Like we just added that in as flavour. And so what ended up as The Room was very much not what we started off with. We just we knew that our job was to turn it into a real game over the time we were developing it, but we didn't know what that game was when we started it.
Well, that's really interesting, because I imagine that when you work as part of a team, and I know that you do, that it's hard to make sure that things aren't designed by committee and that actually you have that kind of overall vision. So does that mean you have to work with people who share your kind of point of view?
I think it really helps. I think we, like Fireproof Studios, we all met working for a different games company called Criterion Studios, who are part of EA. And so we had worked there for 5 years together. So we were a very well-schooled team, very used to how each other worked. And we left and formed our own company specifically because we all got on well and we all sort of wanted the same things and we had the same standards, which I think is important. And very similar tastes. But really we had the same standards. We wanted to make really great games, and I think we've been helped no end over the years by that fact. I think it's much harder for people who don't know each other and have never worked together to start a company. because they have to go through so much learning about each other just to even get to the point where they can talk about creative aspects and what the business is for. So I think, we really benefited from that completely. But I should say, just to go back to your other point, the way we did know how long the game would take was because we only had money to last us for 9 months. So basically, we were an outsourcing. We were making freelance artwork for other games companies. That was our business. We were making the room on the side, with only 2 out of our 10 staff on that game, and then the other 8 was paying the bills effectively. And so we had about 100, I don't know, between 80 and 100,000 pounds in the bank, which would basically have paid for those 2 people to work on that game for about 8 or 9 months, and then we were done. We had no money left. So irrespective of anything, we had to finish the game in 8 to 9 months. And so that's what we did. So we did know how long it would take. And the fact is, the game was formed around those limitations, right? The room is shaped the way it is and looks the way it is because we had to make very practical decisions as we were developing it as to what we could achieve in 9 months.
Can I ask you then about the subsequent games? Because you obviously, with the success of the first one, you might have a bit more time, a bit more money to spend on the sequels that there are available now. Did you have more time and more money?
It was infinitely different, yes. It was infinitely different. I mean, The Room was such a hit that we very much listened to what people had said about the first one. We made a very short, simple game with The Room. So the first thing that we did when we finished it was we created a DLC pack which people could download for free, which basically expanded the game by about 30% in length and added in a lot more content. And we made that free for everybody. And then we went on to The Room 2 after that. And The Room 2, to give you an example, probably cost about 10 to 15 times more to make than The Room 1.
But then I suppose you can invest that into The Room 2 because people know what they're going to get, but they want bigger and better, I suppose, is always the case with a sequel.
That's true. But, yes, that's all true. I mean, but it was also ourselves. We wanted to do much better, right? We had so many limitations when we made The Room 1. We had so many ideas we couldn't put in. So with The Room 2, it was also ourselves. We wanted to completely ace it and just make something that was on every level better than your previous game. I mean, one thing you're not really aware of, unless you're in the games industry, is if you have a hit, if you make a first game and it hits, it's incredibly hard to recreate that in the second game. Doesn't matter how big you make it or how swanky or how evolved it is or how much better the graphics are. What you're missing is the surprise of something novel. Right, so that's gone, and that novelty is what really people love about a game when it first arrives, and it's not like anything else. So you're on a losing battle by creating a sequel, and we knew that. We've been in games long enough to know that it's incredibly hard to keep that same level of interest. So we had to knock it out the park. Right, we had to do everything bigger and better, basically, and that's only to keep the same level of interest. We never expected The Room 2 to be bigger than The Room. We just wanted to get back to where we were, effectively. But we knew that we had to try 5-10 times harder in order to get that back. So
when you bring it onto The Room 3, which is also out, and then The Room Old Sins as well, you're creating a rod for your own back here. We
are indeed, yes. But that's what it's like. If you get success, you don't want to go backwards, right? You just it seems pointless to go backwards. So we always want to do better, always, with each one.
Is there a kind of crunch time? Because you'll have probably heard in the games industry, big kind of blockbuster AAA releases like Red Dead Redemption, there was talk of, you've got to get it out by the deadline. It doesn't really matter, just all hands to the pump. I imagine that with the kind of game that you're making in a smaller team, it might not be quite the same. But just give me some insight into kind of those final months and weeks. What's it like when it gets towards release?
I mean, you would be busier for sure. A bit more nerve-wracking. I mean, we're not a company that crunches. We don't believe in it. We've had to do it so much in our own previous professional careers. We just don't do it at all in our company. And if our game takes longer and we have to pay more money, then that's what we do. But not everyone can do that, right? Not everyone can afford to be in that position. I mean, there are small, teams of 1 or 2 or 3 people who have no money to begin with and who are still trying to make a game, and they have to work their asses off to get it done. Do you know? So it's not just big companies. It's kind of everywhere. I guess just big companies historically have used crunch as a crutch, right, for being cheap or being bad at management. And that's usually, that's very often what happens. People can get too used to it, and it just becomes part of the, the fabric of working in a games company. And that's what you have to reject, right? Just as a sort of you have to reject that from your culture overtly. Like it's hard to fight it unless you say, look, we're just not going to have this. So it's a choice for every company, I guess. But I'd say it was a lot worse 10 years ago. I think it's much reduced now.
Thanks to Barry Mead, who's the commercial director for Fireproof Games.
Stop kidding around. Snake?
Now, Georgia's going to look at why we're so fascinated with zombies.
It's an undeniable mainstay of the gaming industry. Whether it's horror, survival, or first-person shooter, the humble zombie is the butt of much video game violence. But why do we love to take a hammer, AK-47, or indeed any kind of offensive weapon to the poor zombie, other than the fact that they're trying to eat our brains? Well, many of us love being scared. It's like riding a roller coaster. You give your fear circuits a little test drive and get a boost of adrenaline, all the while knowing you're in a safe environment. Horror films, theme parks, haunted houses, they're all popular because of this. But why are zombies so scary? Well, according to Dr. Hank Davis from the University of Guelph, there are 3 powerful triggers of fear that are a result of our evolution. The first is a fear of being chomped on, which arises from being very much part of the food chain.
We're very sensitive to things that prey on us, to a sense of being stalked, to a sense of menace.
The second is a fear of the disgusting and gory.
We are very, very aware of rotting bodies, gore. And it's very good that we avoid these things because they do harbor nasty bacteria that can kill us. So rotting organic matter is not something you want to play with or eat.
And finally, a fear of the uncanny, a person who violates our sense of what a person actually is.
The biggest reason is that you can't reason with it. More than any other species on the planet, ours uses reason. We reason with each other. We are a very, very social species.
And guess what? Zombies tick all 3 scare boxes.
Zombies are also good because they're predators. They carry deep contagion. They themselves are dead bodies, so you don't want to get too close to them. And finally, they won't reason with us.
So there you have it. Zombies are the ultimate spooks. And it could also be argued that zombies provide those of us who feel slightly weird about gruesomely murdering a fellow human, even if they are computer-generated, a guilt-free monster to blow to smithereens.
Thank you, Georgia. Right, let's look at some new releases then, games that we've both been playing quite a lot actually recently. Georgia, why don't you start with a game that I've never heard of, so you're going to have to explain this one to me.
Yes, even the name is weird. It's called Human Fall Flat.
I saw a sign. I had no clue what it tried telling me. Escape the dreams of falling by solving puzzles using only your wits and physics. Human with 0 superpowers. Given the right tools can do a lot. Misusing the tools, he can do even more. Explore surreal dreamscapes, riddled with puzzles and distractions. A game where every rule can be bent and every solution is welcome. Will you try to open that mysterious door? Or would you rather see how far you can throw a speaker set out the window? Human Fall Flat.
This is something I just came across in the PlayStation shop while I was on holiday with my housemates. And it's so weird, and that's what makes it so brilliant. So you're these little horrible fleshy dough people running around in this kind of weird abstract environment. And all you can really do is run around and hold things. And if you're holding something, you can lift it up or drop it. And that's pretty much the entire game mechanism.
So that's it, all you can do? You can just grab stuff and drop stuff and the end?
Yeah, and you can jump.
Oh, great.
So those are the two things. But they fought really, really hard about this, and there's loads of different puzzles where you need to pick things up and drop things or grab things and move things around and just use the sort of physics mechanisms to try and get through different areas. And it's just kind of weirdly surreal and relaxing. You're running around. You can also it's co-op, which is always good. So
always
you can
funny.
Pick up your friend and throw them off the map, and then they fall back down. Or you can maybe there's a door you have to get through, and you actually have to pick up a rock and drop it on the lock, which breaks it. Or there's a catapult that you have to get in and launch the mechanism. So there's loads of different things they've thought of for this really, really basic mechanic, and it's just great.
Is it a bit like Little Big Planet? Because you mentioned co-op, and I was just thinking of in some of the controls there, the characters start to sort of, like ragdoll around the place and stuff, and it sounds like it's co-op as well. Has it got that kind of feel to it?
Do you know what? I was actually looking for Little Big Planet
in
the store to play because I remembered really enjoying that at uni, and I couldn't find it, but I did find this one, and I thought it looked exactly the same kind of stupid, falling around, getting into trouble kind of game. And it is quite similar. But you don't have Stephen Fry's dulcet tones narrating.
I mean,
you can't have everything.
So what do you reckon? It sounds like it's the game that is best played in co-op, maybe?
I tend to think that about all games.
Yeah.
I really like games where you can have a pal on the sofa and just try and solve it together. But I think you can play it on your own. But it helps for the puzzles to have a buddy there who maybe thinks slightly differently to you. And I think you can have up to 8 people play at once, which sounds like chaos. I think it'd be a case of too many doughboys spoil the puzzle. But
So give it a score out of 10 then. What's your feeling if you were gonna rate it out of 10?
Ooh, 8.
8 out of 10. That's a very strong score.
And what about you? What have you been playing?
Well, even though I bought this Xbox One X recently, I don't feel like I can honestly say I've been playing it that much. I mean, I've been trying, but really what's been taking up most of my time is an expansion. So I think that's kind of fair game, really. This is a Hearthstone, which is a card game which a lot of people will be aware of. You can play it on your mobile, or you can play it in loads of different varieties. This is called Rastakhan's Rumble, which is like an expansion of the existing Hearthstone universe. There's 135 new cards, and every time this comes around, it's about, they do 3 or 4 expansions per year. It changes everything. Suddenly it's like a whole brand new game.
To by air, rain and fire. The only things a real troll desire. First to smash and to mash and to bash and maybe mangle. Here in Stranglehold.
I'll be honest with you, I've never really been into card games. Like Magic the Gathering never really appealed to me. I played a bit of Pokemon cards at school and a bit of Yu-Gi-Oh, which was probably the kind of the nerdiest I've gone when it comes to card games. But for some reason, I'm just absolutely addicted to this at the moment. So I've been, not spending any money because it's free to play. You can earn gold by destroying other people at this card game, and it's just really, really addictive. It's not one of the best expansions they've done because it doesn't totally change what they call like the meta game, which is essentially the sorts of decks that people are playing. If like 90% of people are playing one thing, you can sort of tech your one and try and destroy them. But I've been really, really enjoying it, and I'd say it's taken up most of my gaming time. So I don't know, Hearthstone, it's like a game that keeps on giving for me, and this new expansion I've really enjoyed. So it's kind of been consuming me.
I mean, half the words you said, you may as well have been speaking a different language. So Hearthstone.
Yes.
Do you say Rasta Rumble?
Rastakhan's Rumble. I know that all the names of their expansions are kind of crazy.
And when you said card game, I was thinking of like a normal deck of cards, but I'm now getting the impression that's not what you mean.
No, so this is like a computerized card game. So it's like instead of rolling dice, which you might do in a card game, and like playing down your physical cards, This is like an online, on your mobile phone kind of card game. You imagine like poker online, except with crazy Warcraft heroes destroying each other. That's kind of what it is.
Oh, okay, so you could flip like, I don't know, an orc.
Yeah, exactly
and
that.
That
Exactly
beats up the neighbouring player's card of, I don't know, a goblin.
Exactly right. You've got it. It sounds like you played before. But yeah, it's really good. I've just, if you haven't played Hearthstone before and you don't want to spend any money, just to start off with, there's really good training modes in it as well. There's single player options available. You don't have to spend any actual money, and it's properly good. This expansion itself, it's probably going to get a 6 out of 10 from me, but every time they come round, it's like an exciting couple of weeks for me, so I'm right in the middle of that at the moment. Hadouken! Let's look at an old school game now that's been brought back to life in retro revival. We're a big fan of old school games, it's like reliving your childhood, isn't it?
I haven't been able to work it out. Were old games better, or was I dumber and easier to impress?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because when you play revival games and relaunched games, the graphics they have nowadays is how you remember them to be. Do you see what I mean by that? So when you were playing GoldenEye the first time round, when it gets revived, you think, oh yes, the graphics are actually okay in the reversioned imagining of the game, but actually no, they were terrible if you play the proper original. This week we're going to look at Spyro the Dragon, Spyro Reignited, which we've both been playing, probably more than an acceptable adult should play.
I think I smell a barbecue. Looks like I've got some things to do.
Spyro. 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 I'm getting a little winded.
That's me, all right.
How did you find it playing along?
I mean, yeah, I'm a sucker for anything that reminds me of like those early PlayStation 1 games. It's so nice to just play the games again. But then I kind of think with these, like, I would maybe just rather be playing the original because the graphics look great, but the gameplay and the sort of the rubbish graphics are kind of part of the charm.
Yeah.
There's this sort of weird blocky quality to everything, which is really nice. And then they change things, and I don't like change.
Wow. It's like Philistine view. I don't want these games to change.
How dare they improve graphics?
But I know what you mean by that, because I was, and I had this exact situation that you were talking about earlier, where I used to go round to a friend's house who had Spyro the Dragon, because I never had a PlayStation 1, and I went round and played Spyro, and I loved it. I never talked to this friend ever, and I just totally played their PlayStation.
Do you think it was the same friend?
Yeah, it probably was, yeah. But you probably just ditched them and I'd probably jumped in then. But I went back to play it as an adult, and it was this is why I was so keen to get it. And I know it's like 30 quid, when it was released. I was really keen to play it because I thought, right, finally, my own copy of Spyro the Dragon. But the graphics are almost too good. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, it's so polished. It's less charming. It's like those old Disney animations where you can see all the hand-drawn pencil lines. That's part of the charm, and they lose that with all the sort of the swanky computer animation.
Do you think the basic gameplay, because it's more basic compared to some of the games that you play nowadays, do you think that's actually a good thing though, compared to really complicated games and really, you don't really have to use all the buttons in Spyro?
I think that's part of what made it such a good game. I mean, another one they rejigged was Crash Bandicoot, and that was again very, very basic, just kind of running along and jumping, and it's fun. Like there are bits that are really, really hard, and I feel like with modern games often it's just either a bit too easy or so much focusing on this like amazing graphics and look at this world we've created that the gameplay itself is just a bit meh. Yeah.
Can I also say that I did play a tiny bit of Crash, the relaunch version, and I absolutely suck at it. I really suck hard at Crash, so I'm furious. So I haven't really touched that one as much as Spyro, but I did enjoy playing Spyro, and it did feel like I was reliving my childhood and getting a copy of that game, which I never fully owned as a kid. And I've managed to find about 30 dragons so far in game number 1 of the trilogy. You get quite a lot for your money here.
30 dragons out of how many?
I think it's 100. It might be 100.
Chris, you've got a lot of work to do.
So I've got to go. Got to catch some dragons.
I have one tiny gripe as well to mention about this game. So they're bringing Spyro back for the modern age, and hooray, it's all been updated. but I found the controls and the camera angles really, really irritating and hard to use. And I don't know if it was like that in the original game, but I feel like when you're doing something like this, you got to get it right, really. Like, there's no excuse. And I looked online, and it seems like a lot of people were having similar complaints and looking for an update. So it feels like they haven't quite polished all the edges.
I still enjoyed it anyway, but yeah, is it
this
worth...
game about a purple dragon is totally unrealistic.
I demand some more realism. Well, that's it for this month. If there's a game you'd like us to look at, you can get in touch with the show. The email address is gaming@nakedscientists.com. And don't forget to send us your gaming heaven and hell for a feature that we're planning for the future. What's your favourite game and what do you hate playing?
And thanks very much for listening to the first ever episode of Naked Gaming. We'll be back next month. Do join us then.